Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a massive shout out to our amazing sponsor this season, Jo Higgs from Jo Higgs Creative. Jo is a freelance logo and brand designer with over a decade of experience, and she is all about helping female-led businesses stand out and attract their dream clients. Right now, Jo is offering a fantastic free downloadable guide called Building Your Brand. It dives into the basics of branding and how to really boost your brand awareness as a small business owner. Plus, there's a super helpful checklist you can go through at your own pace. You can grab it at www.joannhiggs.co.uk/free download, and I'll make sure to pop the link for that and all the ways to find out more about her in the show notes too. In the meantime though, let's get back to the episode you're here for. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Frankie Tortora for a conversation about all things freelancing and running a business whilst juggling work, kids, and life in general. We dive into the realities of freelancing as a parent, the challenges, the myths, and the honest conversations about success and work-life balance that don't always get talked about. We also chat about valuing your worth, taking breaks to avoid burnout, and how shared experiences can help both parents and freelancers grow personally and professionally. If you are a parent, freelancer, or just curious about building a business whilst keeping your sanity, then this conversation is for you. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hi, I'm your host, Becky McAvoy. I'm a multi-award-winning social media marketer, international speaker, and the dreamer behind Be Heard Socials and the Boss Your Socials Club. I created this podcast to help women like you simplify your life and grow a business on your terms without the overwhelm. So if you're ready for some no BS advice, practical tips, and honest chats that make social media and business feel lighter and more doable, you are in exactly the right place. Right then, let's get started with this week's episode. Hi, Frankie. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes, holding it together. How are you?
I am not too bad. I feel like that all right, spoke to my soul. I am at that point in September where I'm all right, but the minor inconvenience could push me over the edge.
Yeah, that is pretty accurate, to be honest. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I am super excited to have you on the podcast because I first reached out to you, I think it was the beginning of this year. And I think if there has ever been I don't even know what the word is, but to portray freelancing as a parent, it's the amount of times we've had to reschedule.
Yes, we've had to reschedule. Yeah, that sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? It's true.
And every time I think it's been something to do with the kids or being sick or something.
Life be lifing. That's what it is.
But we got there and you are here. And one of the reasons that I had reached out to you was because at the start of this year, I wanted to be having some more conversations around women walking the walk, I guess, with empowering other women in business and all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things I've always loved about you is your community doing it for the kids, because I just think it's an incredible space. But also that it's not just a space for mums, which I think a lot of spaces online are. It is for anybody who is a parent. So that's I feel like the conversation might maybe go off in 100 different directions today, but that is what we're meant to be here talking about.
Yes, let's write that one down. Stay on track.
But before we get into any of that, do you want to just share a little bit more about your story, about being a business owner and all that kind of stuff?
So I'm a graphic designer by trade, freelance designer. I've been doing that for 13 years, something like that, 14. Yeah. And I kind of fell into that or didn't, I don't know. I did music at university, ended up in a sort of arts admin job where I was doing the administration behind the scenes of creative projects. And then I was like, hang on, I'm creative. I don't want to be doing the spreadsheets. I want to be doing the making. So I did that for a few years and then decided I wanted to retrain as a designer. And it was sort of good timing in that the job I was in it was a BBC job. They were moving to Manchester. So unless I moved to Manchester, I was being made redundant. So that was happening. And then I decided to retrain as a designer all at the same time. I had a tiny redundancy pay that would, get me through a few months basically. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to get a designer job in an agency. I'm going to go freelance off the bat. And I had friends literally laugh in my face and tell me I was nuts. All the reactions to that. Anyway, it worked. And 13 years later, I'm still going. So I sort of fell into that career, which I love, by the way. And then 3 years after I'd been freelancing, I got married and got pregnant. And yeah, it was just a very obviously life-changing experience, but also incredibly isolating. And I know becoming a parent can be isolating, full stop. But when you're self-employed, I don't know, I just wasn't moving in circles of people who were working for themselves and having children. I go to you know, like coffee mornings and whatever to meet other parents. And they were all like in these corporate jobs with like 12 months maternity leave, that kind of stuff. And then the freelancers that I did know just weren't at that stage in life, weren't, you know, having babies yet. So I felt really out on my own and tried to find people in real life, failed. Tried to find people on the internet and failed. Like at the time, there was a lot of how to retrain or how to go self-employed on maternity leave. Like, you know, change your life, go from employed to self-employed while you've got your baby napping beside you or whatever, that kind of stuff. But that wasn't me. I was like, I'm already doing it. I'm already freelance. I just want to talk to somebody else who is navigating the maternity allowance system and like, how do you work in any kind of time for money way when you have a small baby attached to you 24 hours a day, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just started a blog to talk about that. And then the people who are reading the blog were like, oh, we want to talk about those experiences. Can we do that on a Facebook group? So I started a Facebook group. That went completely crazy. And now I closed that down in the end and now run a much smaller space with less people in it, but that you pay to access. But ultimately, it's all about talking about being a freelancer, having small people to look after, combination of those two things from the minute you get pregnant or expecting your child right the way through to like my son's 10. We have people who parents are teenagers, people who are leaving home, like going to university. It's all there. Like all of life is there and every stage has its own challenge. So yeah, doing it for kids exists to kind of support you through all of that stuff. The madness of being self-employed and the madness of raising small humans.
Yeah, and I love all of that. There's so much in there, what you just said, that like could almost like there's like 10 different podcast episodes in it. But like I think it's really cool that like a lot of the people that I speak to and a lot of the people that I have on the podcast became self-employed as a result of having children and realizing like how accessible the employed world is and all of that kind of stuff. But I actually think it's really cool. Well, that like you've had a business for 13 years, which, you know, like, especially when you were saying about people laughing in your face, just
literally, I had a friend just laugh at me. He was like, that's not going to work. And I was like,
that just gives me so much rage. Not even just about starting a business, just about anything. It's like, why do people do that about any decision someone's making? But anyway, that's a separate soapbox issue. But like the fact that 13 years later, like you haven't even just got a business, you've got like an incredibly successful business, like a big community, like all that stuff is really amazing. But because I mean, I became self-employed as a result of like I had both my kids by that point, so never had to navigate things like maternity and well, obviously I had to navigate maternity, but not as a self-employed person. And I can't even begin to imagine actually how hard any of that would have been, because there was elements of that was really hard as an employed person, let alone doing all that yourself.
It's not a lot of fun, to be honest. And the system, well, my son's 10 now, the system 10 years later is no better. The pay is still rubbish. The process is still convoluted. Self-employed dads still get absolutely no support from the government whatsoever. Like nothing has changed in the 10 years that I've been doing this, which is deeply depressing. Hopefully more is coming. That the government are currently doing a consultation into all things raising kids and stuff. So there might be changes further down the line, but currently that is not the case. So yeah.
So do dads, I feel like I should know this, but like, because I know in employed, you know, dads get their 2 weeks paternity. Yeah. Do they get that as self-employed?
You get nothing. There is no like nothing. Paternity leave and pay for self-employed dads just isn't the thing. Because obviously you work for yourself. You don't have to get approval to take 2 weeks off. But there's no financial support. There's no financial support whatsoever. And in reality, it means even, you know, a lot of dads are like, I'm going to take my 2 weeks off because I want to do that. And that's the equivalent of what an employed dad would be doing. But in reality, a lot of men that I speak to who become parents don't take any time off at all, like a day, maybe. Because like the challenges for them are feeling the weight of responsibility of, you know, providing financially for their partner. And unless they keep working, that's just not going to happen. You know, this time for money way of earning just, makes taking any kind of time out, let alone weeks or months when you have a baby, incredibly difficult. And I think self-employed dads really feel the weight of that, and not in a good way necessarily.
Yeah. It's just so archaic and patriarchal, isn't it? Because it's basically saying the dad's role is to financially provide. So as long as they do that, what, you know,
they're not needed to raise the child. Therefore, why do they need support? It's archaic is the word. That's the word I use a lot about it.
Yeah. Well, not needed to raise a child or even just support them, but you know, like support them mentally or any of that is just insane.
Bring her cups of tea.
Yeah. That's an important part of it. Well, not me. Mine would be glasses of Ribena because I'm a child that doesn't drink hot drinks.
Nice.
But it's still important. That Ribena was still equally important to get me through the early days. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it is really archaic, and it is really patriarchal and it is really setting that, like, the mum's role is this and the dad's role is this, isn't it? Is that why, like, was doing it for the kids from the very beginning, was it always like an open space for parents?
Yeah, that was a very conscious decision. So like when I was thinking about launching something, I spoke to a few people that I knew who were in a similar situation about what they thought it could look like. I did a very short, few questions basically to various people that I knew. And one of those questions was, do you think this should just be for mothers or should it be for all parents? And honestly, I don't know if it's just the people that I spoke to at that time, but they were all like, why wouldn't it just be for all parents? I guess because all the spaces I'd ever seen talking about running a business around your kids were only ever women talking to women. And so the fact I even felt I had to ask that question says a lot, I think. But then I had all these people go, no, why would you do that? Just do it for everybody. And I was like, yeah, right. And that cemented it for me. So then from the off, when I actually launched it, it's always been the case. If you are raising kids in whatever setup, family arrangement, whatever gender you are, yeah, you are welcome in my space. So yeah, very much a conscious decision and no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah, and I really love that because, I mean, obviously I've got Boss Your Socials Club, which it's for women-owned businesses, and I sometimes get, I wouldn't necessarily say backlash around that, but like questioned on why it's only for women, etc., etc. And I am very passionate about women and mums needing their own space, safe spaces, but it's not about like, one of the things I always say actually is, like, I have that community and I'm in communities that are for women only, but I'm also in communities like being freelance where it's for everybody. And I've been in doing the kids before. It's not like I'm going around going, no, I must only be surrounded by women. It's just like, I think it's so important to have both of those spaces there. But I think what's really good is that a lot, well, not even necessarily a lot, but like there will be more spaces, I think, especially now that exist specifically for mums or women or things like that. I don't know. I don't even know if there are any other ones that are parenting specific, which is for everybody.
I definitely feel like I'm in the minority. There's a lot of increasingly spaces for dads, which is great. And we need more of that because that's been so lacking. And I'm all for that. But this sort of mix of people, I think, is quite unusual. And that's why I think people stick around and a particular sort of person really likes being in there. And it's interesting you say you get backlash for being a women's only space. I often get backlash for being a mix. People are like, why would you do that? Women need spaces to talk to each other, you know. I mean, you can't win as a woman, can you, basically, whatever decision you make. But yeah, like whenever I talk about it, and I do talk about it quite a lot publicly, like on LinkedIn and stuff, I always feel like I need to caveat it with, I obviously think there is huge power in women's only spaces, and I am in other women's only spaces, and I think that they're really important, and I think they should absolutely exist. And the conversation is going to be different as a result, in a different way, not necessarily in a better way. It's not like one or the other, but it's just a different experience, isn't it? And there is space for all of those things. But for me personally, I love the fact that men are in there. I don't know, there's probably a name for this. I'm not a particularly academic sort of person, but I'm the sort of feminist who believes that women having conversations with each other is not that useful in terms of shifting, you know, society, how society treats us. Like, we can have a moan, great, that's important, and we need spaces to do that. But like, I think there's more power in a way in having those conversations with men in the room. Like, you see conferences and stuff about how can we make the world better for women? It's like, that is great, but we need the men in the room to hear these conversations because all the men sadly hold the power. So like, we need more good men, in inverted commas, in those conversations, and that is happening more as well. But yeah, I think it's twofold, because I feel like doing it for kids attracts a certain sort of man who is a feminist, and therefore is often in those like family dynamics, the role is reversed, and they are, as the man, the sole or primary carer for the kids, while their partner has a corporate job, kind of thing. Like, those are the sorts of men that join my space. Not always, but a lot of people are like that. So it's almost like they are taking on the role of the woman, in inverted commas, in traditional sense, in the family. And so my space is like one of the few places where they feel understood, because in, you know, traditional men's spaces, that's not how the majority of families work. And so them going, well, actually, I do the dishes and take the kids to school. Like, that is quite, you know, that can be difficult for them to have that sort of, to have somebody they feel they can relate to in men's only spaces.
When you were saying about, you got the backlash, and like I said it, but they were both for like the very different things. And it's like almost, well, no wonder as women we feel like we need to go around justifying it.
Yeah, big time.
I think it's just having those spaces for everybody without feeling that you need to justify why you do that thing. Do you find like, because what you were saying, like in reality, it's in the very large part men making the decisions. So when we were talking around like how paternity might change for self-employed people, it's gonna be men making those decisions predominantly. And what you were saying around sort of like, you know, we need more good men. I can't remember if you said like speaking up, but or feeling confident enough to, you know, put something forward. Because I often find like I would class my husband as one of the good men.
Me too.
That want
yours and mine.
But I've sometimes found with him, not so much now actually, because we've had lots of conversations around it, but often he wouldn't necessarily want to speak up because he'd feel like he was speaking on something he had no authority on, or he
Get
was
it wrong.
Yeah, or he'd get it wrong. And in some cases, like in fairness, he would, because he'd think he'd see the problem, but wouldn't necessarily understand like the complexities underneath it. And actually, like, have you noticed that or has there been any of that in doing it for the kids? Because I think what like I would see happening from that is the men who want good stuff to happen and want equality and who are feminists, what doing it for the kids probably allows, or spaces like that, is them understanding like the intricacies of all of the.
Yes.
It adds more power to their argument because they actually, like, they can't understand what it's like to be a woman, or, you know, but the only way they can is to talk to people.
Like, we have had threads about the realities of a lot of women's experiences, which is like, you know, I'm running this business, but I'm also doing all of the housework and I'm doing all of the like mental load and all of that. We've had threads where women are venting about that stuff in a space where men are present. And I just feel like there's such a different dynamic to that. And it's not that the men are silent, but they maybe don't chip into the comments as much as they might do on other threads. But the fact that they are even like listening, like, I just think that's so great.
Yeah.
And it's never like, but it's also like, it's great on the women's side. We're not doing it for kids, isn't a space where it's like all men behave in this way. But, you know, we're very much like everybody's experience is different, and it's not just men versus women, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I just feel like being able to have that kind of chat and equally vent those kind of things, but with men present, listening, understanding, like, yeah, they just wouldn't be present in those conversations and so many other parts of their life. And yeah, I think it's great.
I think, you know, like where they probably would be present in a lot of those conversations. And as much as I say, you know, like my husband is one of the good ones, all of that stuff. But early doors where he was being exposed to that was like possibly an argument between us, where I was very
big time.
And then you don't see it. Like, I think if you're then in a space where you see other women saying the same thing, and you can look at it objectively as opposed to like a personal attack on.
Yes, so true. This isn't just me. This is a bigger issue. Yeah, right. Well, I talk about it a lot, but like the patriarchy hurts all of us, basically, whether you're a man or a woman. And
yeah,
it's bigger than us.
What you said earlier about as well, like men who are feminists, because I mean, that's another soapbox issue of mine. And again, a whole different episode, but why being a feminist isn't about being a woman, and feminism isn't about women. It's about equality.
Yeah. See, a lot of feminism is about men's issues. Yeah. Like, it's not violence against women. It is men's violence. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the way we frame it is as though it's everything is a female issue. This is women's issues. No. A lot of women's issues are a direct result of men's behavior and how men are raised, and about how society allows men to act, or the pressures put upon them. So much of feminism is about men. Like, and it's just crazy to think that it's just women.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And also when I talk about, which is such an important issue at the moment, like men's mental health and male suicide rates and things like that. Actually, it's a patriarchy that's causing that. Feminism 100%. What feminism is trying to break down is the patriarchy. And I find it really infuriating when it's like, oh, so we need this. This is where I get infuriated by, like, we need this men's movement. And it's not that we don't. But you know, that's what feminism is, right?
That's what we're trying to do, guys. Yeah.
But it is that, isn't it? It's like, I love that you said, like, basically it's men who are feminists joining that space. And, you know, like men who are raising feminists and raising the next generation of, like, and showing them actually, well, not just men, but like men and women, showing their kids what, you know, it's like to live in a fairer household or a fairer
Yeah.
work environment and stuff. So what would you say, like, from especially having a business without having kids and then having kids whilst you were a business owner, do you think there's some really common myths around freelancing as a parent?
Yes, I do. Again, this is partly why I started my own thing, because I found, particularly 10 years ago when I had my son, the messaging online around running a business as a mother was a very specific flavour of, not sure what the word is there. You know, there was a lot of like nap time hustle was a phrase when my son was born. I mean, I think some people still use that now, but like nap time hustle, don't sleep when the baby sleeps, girl boss, mompreneur, all that. And then literal like visual representations of women like looking amazing, full makeup, done up to the nines with like a sleeping baby next to them while they're at their laptop kind of vibes, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I do think there is still some of that around. But yeah, like again, like when I was trying to find a space and couldn't, part of starting doing it for the kids was sort of like, I feel like I need an antidote to some of that. And I hope that I've provided over the years a bit of an antidote to some of that. Like on my podcast, we don't talk about any of those things. Like we're very much like, this is the reality. This is the dutty, exhausting reality of, being self-employed when you have small people around. It's not glamorous. And you're not necessarily going to make 10K a month. And it's hard, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means, in fact, I've always kind of said, you know, I think it's sort of dangerous to pretend that it is easy and can be a money spinner and all the rest of it, because then when lots of women, particularly women, do go down that route and it's actually not what they expected it to be, they're more likely to give up because they've been sold this myth, this misrepresentation. They're more likely to go, oh, hang on, this is actually, maybe this isn't for me. Whereas if you have people going, look, this is the most like rewarding thing I've ever done, I love doing it, but it is really hard, you're more likely to stick. I feel like you're more likely to stick with it if you have those sorts of voices around you. So yes, I do think there's a lot of myths about being self-employed, specifically as a mother. I know there's also some LinkedIn bros stuff about dads as well, and I just think it doesn't, a lot of the time in my experience, those messages are connected to somebody who's trying to sell you something, whether that's a course or whatever it is, because they're like, oh, you can live this amazing life around your kids. And actually, they don't really care what the reality is because it sells more of their thing to tell you that it's glamorous and easy and a money spinner, when maybe it isn't. And don't get me wrong, some people do earn 10K a month and some people do, you know, have a very successful business literally just around their kids' nap times and they don't have much formal childcare and stuff. Amazing. But the vast majority of us are not living like that.
I 100% agree with you on the conversations. And that's one of the reasons that I love the Doing It for the Kids podcast, because it is just, like you said, it is just very real and and I think it's about like what you were saying, like normalizing it, because I think the reason people give up is because they think they're getting it wrong because it's so hard.
Yeah, I was told it was going to look like this. You know, this is what the internet told me. Like, yeah. And then it doesn't necessarily work like that. And I just feel like that's so demotivating. And you're right. You feel like you're the problem. Everyone else is managing to do it this way, or that's what I was told. Why can't I do it? Why aren't I as successful as them or whatever? And that just eats away at you, basically. And it eats away at people a lot quicker than others. And then they don't do it at all. And that's a shame because maybe it could have worked for them in the long term.
And that's the same. It's the same kind of narrative as around. I think it's all tied in together, actually. I mean, there's a lot of like, I guess the myth is around. I think this is just a myth of life, not just
yes.
But like that we live in a world now where women can have it all, and I think it's
100%.
Defining what having it all actually means to you, because like that's very different to different people, but also it's all very mixed up in the narrative. And I find this especially working in a more online business and especially as well, but constantly being sold this like dream of 6-figure or seven seem to have moved to now. But all this, you know, like you saying about working with the baby on your lap or whatever it might be, it's the same as the imagery around like the laptop on the beach. But there's all of that, isn't there, around like you can earn this money. And I think, like you said, you can, like, and it's fine. But I think it's so important to have the conversations around you do have to sacrifice something, and it's okay to sacrifice whatever that thing is, but that's not going to be right for everybody. So it's more of, and I think it's one of the reasons I'm so drawn to lots of stuff you do and your podcast is it's like, yeah, you can do that, but here's the reality of it. Like, as I work. So when people saying on social media, they've had this 6-figure launch, what I actually want to know is how much they spent, what of that was profit, how many hours did they work, you know, how many times did they not put their kids to bed? It is about that reality, isn't it? Of like, yeah, what did you sacrifice for that? And then let me make an informed decision, because it's not right or wrong that you chose what you chose, but it's about making informed decisions, isn't it? And that obviously isn't how marketing works.
Like once upon a time, I started writing a book. I was like, I should write a book about being a freelancer and a parent. And I didn't get past the introduction, because my introduction was basically like, everyone's experience is different. Like everyone's version of success is different. Every child is different. One's partner is different. Maybe you don't have a partner. Maybe you have multiple partners. It was just like, and it was just me going to the point where it's like, oh God, I can't give advice on anything, because everybody, there's so many like different, as you say, like different balls in the air, and everyone's balls are different. Sorry for this really poor analogy, but you know what I mean? So like, my point is, if somebody's trying to sell you a certain way of like a certain outcome or a certain way of living life, I just find that so difficult to swallow, because my experience is everybody's situation is so wildly different that it's basically impossible to tell anyone what their life should or shouldn't look like, or what success means to them. Success to me at the moment is my 10-year-old going to sleep on his own, and he still doesn't want to do that. That would be amazing. And I spend a lot of time in my evenings. I can't work evenings anymore, basically. So like, everybody's thing, everyone has a different idea of what success is for them. Yeah, I hope in doing it for kids, like, it's pretty clear. The message is clear. Like, whatever your life looks like is the right path for you.
Yeah, and there isn't right or wrong to it, but I think it's about giving the space to like suss out what that is, because I think you get so drawn into the shoulds or the comparison or the whatever else, that if you've just got a whole group of different people going, well, I do it this way and I do it this way and I do it that way, like actually it's just that space, to suss out like what is right for you, and be honest along the way. So I've made a lot of decisions in the last sort of year and a half in my business to basically work less, and that's come from a point of sort of realizing that, so my kids are 9 and 11 now, but they need me physically less, but they need mentally more than they get me. So, and I basically came to a point where I was like, right, I need more headspace, like, and I need to be working less. But I'm very honest about the fact that I've done that, and I feel so privileged that I've got to a position where I can do it. However, I'm earning probably a third of what I was earning like a couple of years ago. And I think it's being honest about that. I'm okay with that. And again, I feel very privileged that we've even been able to have that as a choice. But I think often what you see is like, oh, I've reduced my hours and I'm earning twice as much as I ever earned. That's not the reality for me. I'm not saying that you can't do that. Sure. But it's, and sort of making a decision, even actually since they've gone back to school this year, more than ever, I'm like, I have got to finish work at 3:00 before they come home.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the whole evening spirals from that point if I just try and do anything. So
can relate to that.
Well, and that's, not necessarily unique to me. I think it's probably, like you've just said, you relate to it. But that comes from our circumstances, in that I live 300 miles away from my family and I can't round to wherever, and, various different other things. So it's not that, I'm saying, oh, it absolutely isn't possible. But I think it's getting very comfortable with your own reality, isn't it? And then making the decisions sort of based on that. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I suppose that's really the other myth, isn't it? Is there is no one size fits all or cookie cutter approach.
Absolutely not. The opposite is true.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but defining what success is for you is a really powerful thing to do. Like, what is it that you want to do more of? Not just professionally, in your life, with your kids, not with your kids, whatever it is. Like, what are the things that you want in your life? And then try and prioritize one or two of those things around how you build your business, basically.
My friend said this to me when I walked out of my job for various different reasons, which I won't go into. It's a whole different episode. I walked out of my job and said that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mum. And I did that for probably about 6 months. And then my daughter was about to turn 3. And then this opportunity of, like, basically the way I kind of fell into business kind of happened. And I started to really enjoy it. And I remember, and I really struggled with it because I'd made I hadn't made a whole thing, but I had said, I'm leaving my job because I want to spend more time with my children. I was like, oh God, 6 months later, I turn around and go, so I'm starting a business, actually. My friend said to me at that point, she was like, it's okay to change your mind, right?
Right,
like
yes.
make you, so even with success, it's like, I think success changes for me on a monthly, like, I think I've got this overarching, like, what success looks to me, but actually to be honest, right now, it changes on a day by day basis.
Yeah. And so much of that is tied to my children getting older and what they need from me. And so I feel like I'm constantly moving on to the next thing, constantly having to adjust for my kids, like building my business, making decisions, saying yes or no to different things because of different things that they need, my kids need from me at this stage in their lives. It's constant, ever changing, always moving.
And actually, how incredible is that? Because I think for me, a lot of my success is around the freedom to make choices. So even if, like last year, I decided to stop doing done for you social media management and social media work because I wanted to take the whole summer off, and that made it really difficult to do that. But actually, like, I'm just bringing back in a thing where I'm starting to do some done for you stuff again. And I used to worry so much about, like, oh, people will think that
toing and froing.
Or I can never stick to anything, or I can never but actually, if the success is around the freedom to choose, like, there's enormous privilege in that, and I do recognize the privilege, but also there's enormous success in that to go, actually, I want to do this now. No, I don't want to do this now.
Yeah.
And I can,
I nearly called doing it for the kids adapt to survive.
I love that.
Not the most, like, positive name. Sounds like a CBeebies, like, wildlife show or something. But yeah, like, the idea is there. Like, you're constantly having to adapt at whatever stage of parenthood you're at. It's like, you're just got to keep moving, got to keep changing, tweaking. Yeah, putting your rates up, changing your offer, deciding who you do and don't work with. Like, that's just a constantly ever moving feast.
Do you say you've had any sort of standout, is there any standout moments or things, like moments where you've just been, like, super proud of the community that you've created?
Yeah. I've had people come. So I do these, like, meetups, real life meetups, which you've been to. Amazing. And, like, they are currently, like, once a year, and we have 100 people in a room. And a lot of these people know each other from the internet, but they haven't met each other before in real life. And it's just such a good time. It's great. And I've had people come up to me at those events and tell me just crazy stuff that has made me cry in a good way. People talking about they wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for my community and the connections that they've made, or they might have given up if they hadn't been able to have that space to, like, share concerns and worries about stuff. People who, people have been in my community but have never written a post or commented ever. And they're like, this is the best thing that's happened to my business. That kind of stuff. Crazy, crazy stuff. And people who talked about, like, mental health crises and how listening to podcasts has made a massive difference to how they feel about what they're doing and feeling part of something bigger and, that kind of thing. When I moved from, like, a free to paid community, I had people messaging me saying, I've made tens of thousands of pounds out of being in your space, and, like, I would love to pay you back in some way. I wasn't asking them for cash, but, like, brilliant, supportive messages like that. Amazing. I mean, all I'm really waiting for, to be honest, is of doing it for kids' wedding and a baby. That would be, because otherwise, like, we've got new business partners, friends, like, all these amazing things have come out of the space, except a proper, like, couple and baby. So I'm waiting for that. I will close it all once we have achieved this goal. But yeah, like, so much good stuff. And it's so easy to forget because it is bloody hard. It's bloody hard work. And I've nearly shut it down so many times. And so that, honestly, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me going, to be honest.
And the impact that you have is so wide, so bigger than you can ever really measure, isn't it? Like me saying, oh, that's one of the podcasts that I listen to every episode of, but I don't necessarily, like, share that.
I don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's, like, even when I think about this podcast, actually, the amount of times that you have been shouted out on this podcast, because either I've met people through, like you said, I've come to the in-person event or various different things, or you've shared something of theirs and then I've seen it and I've reached out to them, oh, would you go on the podcast? And there's just so much there that you can't even measure, is there?
It's very hard to, like, quantify the impact of running an online community, for sure. And, like, I'm now at a stage where, like, people come to me to talk about building communities and launching communities and stuff, which is great. I could talk about it all day, but, like, yeah, people can be quite down on, like, the lurkers and people who don't visibly interact. But my God, like, honestly, yeah, some of the messages I have from people years later who I've never seen, like, on any, like, visible way, and they're talking about yes, how much they've learned and what an impact it's had. I mean, that is amazing, really. And it's so easy to forget when you're like running it, how deep it goes. Like under the surface of what you actually see is so much more going on. But it's very hard to track that stuff and fully appreciate or understand the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. What what helps you show up when you're not necessarily with the community, but I suppose a bit of that, but like, and I know you have struggled with this recently actually, because you've been quite honest about it on social media. Like when you are struggling to sort of show up, what helps you show up, and what sort of tips would you give to anyone doing the same?
I'm honestly a big believer in like stepping back, basically, for a bit. I think my brain works in one of two ways. One is like step back, not to do the thing, reboot, actually rest, avoid burning out, that kind of stuff. Or I'm like, keep going, never stop, like basically push through the pain kind of thing. But as I get older and wiser, I'm definitely leaning more towards option one, option two, because the cycle of burnout is not sustainable, basically. Yeah, stepping back, and then hopefully you come back with more enthusiasm and more energy, and then everyone benefits, as opposed to you just like pushing on and doing enough. It's not an ideal position to be in. And I do that thing where we talked about this in the podcast a lot. Like I have a folder that has lots of nice words about, from people over the years and things that they've said. Like I will go in there and read that stuff and be like, yes, this is why I do this. I do that quite a lot, actually. That honestly helps massively. And it's that classic, like when you work on your own, and I do work on my own, even running the community, like it's so easy to just get in your own head and talk yourself into weird corners, so to have a sort of folder of real, like, validation, essentially, and like, yes, you are on the right track, yes, you are doing a good job, like that's really good to have. If you're not saving a folder of things about yourself, everyone should be doing that. But yeah, I increasingly just need to take time out, go and dig in my garden or whatever it is that I need to do. Yeah, but that's easier said than done when it is just you doing the thing. Like, it's hard. Yeah,
I love what you said about the giving yourself space, and I totally get what you're saying about it is hard, but I think that's why hearing people say it is quite good, because I think sometimes people just need permission for
yes,
that.
100%.
Have to be always going, and sometimes you're not going to get clear on anything until you do give yourself space. I took the summer off, and I have done for the last 3 years, which has been amazing. But this year was the first year that I deleted all the social media apps from my phone. It was unreal. In fact, like, I didn't want to come back and be that person of like, look at all these things I've learned.
That's a LinkedIn post for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. Like, it's that thing, isn't it? But I knew it was going to make an impact, but I didn't realize quite how much I was being drained by it. Like, actually, you can give yourself space, and you don't have, things don't have to dominate. So I love all of that.
And there's definitely been points where I've just done that and not really explained, and no one's died. Like nothing awful has happened. I mean, there have been periods where I've lost a load of members of my community, but ultimately I have to look after myself. And if I have to just step back and not do as much and lose a bit of money, like, it's just, got to look after your own body and mind. There was a period where we didn't make the podcast for ages because I was not my mental health was on the floor, basically. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't put myself out in this like super visible, vulnerable, like podcasting is quite vulnerable, I think. Super visible, vulnerable way. I just can't do this right now. And we didn't. And like, nobody complained. I mean, a few people were like, where have you gone? But like, nothing really bad happened as a result. And then when we came back, it was so much more fun and it was so much better. And it was like, yes, this is why we do this thing, Yeah. And the podcast doesn't make me any money. So that's an easy one to drop, basically. Because you've got to prioritise when you're self-employed the things that make you money. So,
and I think you're right. Like, podcasting, I think, is very vulnerable. Sometimes I forget that I've said things, and then I forget that people listen.
Yeah. And like, if you record stuff ages ago and then somebody, done an interview like 3 months ago and they put it out and I'm just like, oh my God, what did I say? Yeah. Yeah.
And in the same way, and that's the same with social media, isn't it? Social media is very vulnerable. And I think
it is
it's something you can show up in different ways, but certainly the way that I do my social media, and since coming back after summer, I was like, right, I do need to go back on social media because social media is literally my job.
Yes. Mm.
But I've had a real serious sort of almost word with myself about like, okay, but some things have to change, and you have to change maybe how long you're on it, which is why my biggest goal at the moment is to make social media work for me in the way that I want it to work, but by spending as little time on it as possible.
Yeah, brilliant. That is a great goal. I love that. Sign me up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And just because, but also, I say I'm a social media marketer. That doesn't mean that I have to like pass my life over to social media. So yeah, I think space and just being really clear on what you have to achieve. And
again, like this comes up on our podcast a lot, like, yeah, dropping things that you can drop and just doing the bare minimum, particularly if you've just had a baby, for example, or even when you're pregnant and you're feeling really ropey, like just concentrate on the client work, getting the cash in the bank, everything else can wait, basically.
And also that comes up on the podcast a lot. That's come from questions from people. So it shows how important that is.
Yeah.
That it doesn't go away. I feel like I've got to a point where I'm quite good with boundaries and giving myself space, that kind of thing. But it is a constant, like I constantly have to sort of, like, it's not just a one and done, like, oh yeah, I've got that crack now.
Yes.
Like I constantly go, like, have a word with myself basically to go, yeah, no, that is okay. You will be better for it.
I've had like all flavors of boundaries over the years and I still don't have it worked out. Like I had a co-working space. I had, like I was working at the kitchen table for a bit and then I had like a little office it was in a bookshelf basically in the living room. We did like various setups in our own home, but then also like emotional boundaries. Like I'm not going to check my email at this time. I'm not going to go on social media or this, like boundaries with yourself, not just with your kids and your family and domestic stuff, but also like boundaries around my own getting sucked into just working 24/7, especially when my kids are at home and they need me and, I'm there thinking, even if I'm not on my phone, I'm thinking about work. Like all of that stuff is just, adapt to survive, a constant learn and change and try and work out what's working and what isn't and what I need to be doing at this stage. But I do think, boundaries is like one of the key things to being a happy self-employed parent. But it's also one of the hardest to nail. And again, like every family is different, basically. It's an ongoing struggle. I have such memories of when we had like our box room. It was technically a bedroom, but I had a computer in there. When my son was like 18 months or whatever, I've got this vision of him. There was this like 1/2 inch gap under the door and his little fingers just like literally like clawing at the door, little hand under the door. That for me just sums up, trying to instill a boundary by having the door closed and mummy's working on the outside, but just not, in reality, it's just not working at all. And I'm still massively distracted by this child just on the other side and feeling guilty and all the rest of it.
Yeah, God, I can't imagine why we feel so much guilt constantly.
Yeah. But that was one of the moments where I was like, okay, we need more actual childcare because I can't work like this. This is not fun. It's not fun for my kid. It's not fun for me.
Well, and I suppose it's a little bit like what the conversation we were having about success earlier, isn't it? Like boundaries is a constant, ever-changing thing. As they grow up and grow into different phases and all that kind of thing, all those boundaries like change around stuff. Like I know that especially with my eldest now, he could get in from school and I could probably come out and work for another like 2-3 hours, but it's almost a boundary for me to go no, because I want to be in the house. Like like he would happily just sit off in his room, but the boundary for me isn't about necessarily so I can get the work done. It's about like, no, go in the house because then you're there if it's like it's almost like, he doesn't need me so much, so maybe I could much easier work outside. But I have to put a boundary in to say no,
I want to be available at this point in the day.
Yeah.
Even if he doesn't come over and wants to engage, he knows that I'm available if he needs me kind of stuff. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I do just think it's an ever-changing thing. And I try and ask, say this, like, makes me sound really like, well, I don't even know, professional is not the word, but I don't always do it. But I try to have like a sort of planning session every quarter to plan what I'm doing next. And one of the questions I try and ask myself in there is, what boundaries do I need?
Nice.
Like make this stuff happen and I only brought that in again at the beginning of this year, where it was like, well, actually, because what I needed last month could be completely different to what I need next month.
That's a good idea. I'm writing that down.
Final question. What advice would you go back and give yourself?
Oh man.
The early days of running your business.
In the early days of running my business, I would say, I said this on another podcast actually recently, but it's true. You are better than you think you are. And you are worth more than you think you are. Oh my God, the amount, like the rates that I was charging when I first started as a freelancer is actually makes me feel a bit ill. Like, I didn't have that much experience, but I just did jobs for absolutely nothing for anyone. War. So I guess more confidence in my abilities and self-worth. And I know that that's, that can be a female trait, and it takes time to build that confidence. Yeah. And I still now, I'm like, I do work for clients and I'm like, this is rubbish. In my head, it's just like, this is totally rubbish. But it's not. Like, it's not. And I try and tell that voice to shut up because it's really not correct. But yeah, I would have liked to have had more confidence sooner, I think. But then I do think that's just a matter of doing more experience. And yeah, I think like it's interesting to me that I only started reaching out to community when I had a baby, and really I could have done that much sooner as well. And maybe I would have put my rates up if I'd been speaking to other freelancers who were like, you're charging how much? So maybe if I'd built a community around me sooner, I would have had confidence more quickly, or been able to ask for, cross-check my pricing and that kind of stuff that I just didn't really have. Yeah. But with so much, it's just like, it just comes with time. Everything takes time, doesn't it?
And you have to make the mistakes sometimes, don't you?
Exactly. You've got to fall over. So yeah, totally.
I do think what you said, though, around the surrounding yourself with people and joining communities and that kind of thing, I think that's so powerful because, like you said, even if you hadn't gone in and said, oh, this is what I'm charging, does this look right? Like just in communities, you see people talking about not necessarily what they're charging, but those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think it is just really a bit like we were saying earlier about whether it's men being around conversations happening between women or freelancers, business people, whatever, being around conversations happening between other business people.
Yeah.
It's just
I would have got a contract a lot earlier, for example. I only started doing that like 4 years ago. I mean, it's bonkers. Yeah, contracts, pricing. I just feel like I would have got toward a better place much quicker had I had other people around me, not setting an example, but like, yeah, just that sharing of experiences and like just giving me more confidence to go, oh, this person's done that, so I can do that too. Me sending a contract is not going to mean they don't want to work with me anymore. Like I convinced myself that sending a contract would scare loads of people off. It's never scared anyone off ever.
Actually, it can put people off by not having it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Or even the pricing thing. I was thinking this when I was in Home. Right, so I was in Home Bargains the other day and I was trying to buy some drain cleaner. And I was looking at these two this is the riveting life I lead. But I was looking at these two drain cleaners. I was with my husband and one of them was like 99p and one of them was like £3.50. And he was like, well, let's get this cheap one.
No, let's get the £3.50 one. Yeah, totally.
So sometimes I think when you charge less, it can almost have the adverse effect, can't it?
Big time. And also, I've talked about this on our podcast, but like you do your best work when you're getting paid a good rate.
Yes.
Like it motivates you to do the best work. And when you're getting paid nothing, you're just full of resentment and you don't have enough time, it's just that is not an environment to doing good work, basically.
And you had shared on your socials something which I now wish I'd looked at before and could actually remember the stat. But there was a stat.
Was it the one that I can't remember as well? But go on.
It was around the percentage less, I think, that women earn.
Okay, yeah, I know that one now. Yeah. Stats is not my strong point. It's 43%. So female freelancers get paid or charge 43% less than their male counterparts. That's based on research from Ipsy. I mean, that is a huge percentage difference. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but also is deeply, deeply depressing. And yeah, if we can get more women talking to other women about their rates and encouraging each other but not even that, more women talking to men. I mean, here's another example of having people like all genders in the space. Part of the reason I put my rates up initially years ago now was because I was co-mentoring with Steve, who I make my podcast with, and he was like, you're charging what? And as a man, to him, that was just like shocking, basically. He was like, no, you need to be charging 3 times as much or whatever. So I owe him that. But like, yeah, spaces where lots of people are urging you on to go, no, that is not the going rate. Here's, like, we share a report. There's an annual report that various people do about like the average day rates for freelancers and stuff. Like you can access those sorts of things. But just to have people to go, no, add 10%, add 25. When you're earning 43% less, you have there's a big window there of where you can go, Yeah. And I wonder if perhaps that is tied to women having babies. I don't know.
I think there's so much tied up in it, isn't there? There's so sort of like anything like that when I try and do it. And you look back at the messaging that we've had sort of like our whole life around various different things. And it's like, no wonder we're all so messed up. Like when you look at what we consumed growing up in the 90s or...
dark times, honestly. But yeah, like I was freelance 3 years before I had my son. And basically having a baby decimated my business. Like it was 3 steps back in terms of the amount of time that I had and my confidence and all of it. Like it was big. And so I do wonder if that 43% maybe is in some way connected to some of those women having a similar experience to me. I don't know.
Well, and I suppose women as well, like I said, like I speak to a lot of women who leave their job to start a job around their children. And it's like, actually, I'm just so grateful that I can
for
do
any work.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Yeah, that was definitely me at the start. Whatever it is, I'll do it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. This has been great chat. I enjoyed it.
I do highly recommend going and giving you a follow, checking out the community, definitely listening to the podcast, all of that stuff. So do you want to share a little bit about where people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all out doingitforthekids.net. You can get to my socials from there. You can join the community. You can find the podcast, but you can also find out like about me as a designer if you're interested in that. It's all there. So yeah.
Go check out all of Frankie's stuff because honestly, what she does is amazing. And yeah, just thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I am really grateful you chose to spend your time here. Before you go, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I've got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence, and community. It's a place where we ban the word should because we believe in bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life, and your business. You'll get a monthly content plan, ready-to-use templates, accountability and action sessions, a private member podcast, expert support, and a brilliant community of women who get it. It's like having a mini social media expert in your pocket so you can show up with confidence without the overwhelm. Membership starts at just £24 a month, and there's a pro tier if you want even more support. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time.